thought leader in energy, water and climate change policies and implementation for urban, national and international sustainable development. The man behind US Department of Energy's US-India-China Cities Partnership, a technical advisor on low-carbon urban growth strategies and eco-city planning and development. He has developed energy, water, climate change systems analysis framework for cities and is the lead author of US Global Change Research Program's first ever assessment of the effects on climate change on energy production and use in the United States. Meet Vatsal Bhatt, Director of Cities and Neighbourhood Developments, US Green Building Council.
Hello and welcome everyone. This is me, Pooja Solanki, and today I'm in conversation with Mr. Vatsal Bhatt. We'll be talking on smart cities, but we take this conversation further. Before that, we'll welcome our very special guest for the day. Hello and welcome to the show, sir.
Well, thank you for having me here.
So since we're talking about smart cities so much these days, not many people are aware, what exactly is a smart city. So my first question to you would be, what exactly are smart cities?
Well, it will be very hard to exactly define what is smart city because this concept is evolving, and many times people define it in terms of technology, people define it in terms of public health, people define it in terms of livability. But all these become part of a city being smarter, city being sustainable, city being green and all. So its definition is very much subjective to who and how we are looking into it. So obviously when we talk about smart cities, technologies are part of it. 24/7 service availability is part of it. And obviously people-centric. It needs to be people-centric. And that is why we are trying to look into it from all the perspectives. And at the end, what we try to look into it is the city should be performing at the level that people are asking for. Or if at all cities want to compete with their peers, then they should be competing in the arena where their peers are also operating at the same level. So for an example, if a city wants to really perform well, then it needs to come up to their service delivery, technology, and people experience, livability part of it. At the same time, this smart city will then attract a lot of investments in terms of capital coming in from different parts of the country as well as world, and then intellectual capital flowing into it. Because that is where a city is going to become smart. If at all we are smart, then the city is smarter, and the infrastructure will grow to the level of what consumers can accept.
Moving further, what are the components of a smart city?
So as we talked, there are many parts of a smart city, right? Energy, water, waste disposal, transportation, education and skill development, health and safety, as well as housing and overall economic progression of the entire mass, all the people that are here in a city. They need to move ahead over time, and their economic conditions, education conditions, public health and safety needs to grow. And that's where these are the basic crux of it, and we can talk further as the discussion goes further. We'll talk more in the details about many of these things.
So since you mentioned, that the smart cities need to be people-centric, for that the livability factor needs to be increased. So
Sure.
Are smart cities providing that?
Again, some of these things are very hard to measure, but that is what we are trying to do at US Green Building Council. US Green Building Council for last 20 years is at the forefront of sustainability, energy and environmental sustainability, and they are also trying to increase the human experience in a building. So US Green Building Council started the green building movement more than 20 years ago, and now they are at the forefront improving building performance all across the board. So US Green Building Council is present, or their activities are present in 50 countries. So that's a big number. But you can see the objective here is to talk about performance. That performance is about services, technology and all, but also in the livability standard of it. So any city, even you talk about Boston or New York or Paris, they all are comparing themselves to other cities when they talk about livability and where they are. And they want to do more and more and more. So conceptually speaking, all of our levels of livability, public health, education are going to grow as we move ahead, and cities are improving themselves. So that is where the livability definition is in a kind of very moving scale. And that is where USGBC is coming into this discussion and say, we work with buildings, now we want to work with cities. And can we really work with cities in looking into their existing condition. They are doing great. Can we really measure their performance so that we can really incentivize them to do better and better and better day after day and years after years? So in a way, our levels of livability will go up over time in whichever city you talk about. And that is where USGBC is at the cusp of it, trying to really measure the performance of cities and seeing how we can do better over time.
So we talked about livability. So aren't our current cities livable?
Well, in a way, I live in Long Island near New York City. It's livable. But do I aspire for higher standards and higher livability? I think it's in the human gene. We always keep on aspiring to do better. So yes, right now we are in whatever condition here in Gurgaon or in India, China have worked quite a lot. Everywhere there is a standard, we grow into it. But obviously, our intellectuals may be asking for higher standards of livability, higher standards of other services, and that is the kind of next level. We all progress, and that's the kind of urban progression, urban prosperity that we all aspire for.
So, basic reason, you tell me, why do we actually need smart cities?
That is just a paradigm. Smart cities is a paradigm. As we talk about smart cities, green cities, eco cities, livable cities, there are so many different names of it. And obviously, the name defines its purpose, but mostly we all aspire to go to a level where that's a next from wherever we are, and improving our standards of living, services, and all this kind of stuff. Cell phone industry has shown us how we can raise our expectations quite quickly. And communications have improved over last all these years so much. That's the kind of crux of it, and that's the kind of level as we are going ahead. Now again, you talked about why do we need smart cities? Well, that's one of the measures to tell all of us, oh yeah, let's move forward. And smart cities is guiding us towards one principle. So many of the people are talking about smart cities as digital cities. Well, that's just a part of it. But other infrastructure, other services are integrated into it, as I said, obviously talking about public health, safety, education, and economic progression. So all these things together will lead us towards smart cities.
So what kind of infrastructure will a smart city have?
Well, let me just first say what people are talking about. And many people are talking about smart cities having digital infrastructure. Everything is smoothly flowing and all. And these are great goals. And if at all we aspire for more, we keep up improving our levels of performance, cities' performance, up and up and up, and it goes up and up and up. So I think that is where we need to look into different levels and how we aspire for them. So again, when we talk about technology, so digital technology is going to be part of it. For an example, as I said, water, energy, transportation, solid waste. All these are going to be part of it, telecommunications. These are all going to be part of our discussion. And these technologies are going to be improving. Now, how digitally we can connect these technologies with each other, as well as the consumers, is going to be a crucial part of it. And that's where digital technology can probably become an integral part of all these things. So, do I want to say that smart cities are only digital cities? No. But it's an integration of all these things coming together for a city's performance improving over time.
Moving further, tell me what role technology has in smart cities.
Now, geographical information system also becomes a big part of it, because then you can map certain things, analyze for certain things in different manner and all, and it operates as a kind of integrator as well to a certain extent for infrastructure, urban infrastructure. Now, this is at the city scale. At the building scales, technologies are going to improve as well. You just heard from interviews that you had on buildings that buildings can go quite efficient, and buildings can have different intelligent systems within themselves that will try to bring down the curtains when the outside light is very high or low and all. It would try to ramp up the air conditioner when the outside heat is high. So all these are smart technologies helping our performance, helping our human experience, helping our comfortness or comfort levels. So technologies are going to be helpful at many of these different junctures. Now, and then finally it's people-centric. So can we as people use some of these technologies? So that's what I was earlier talking about, people-centric, making it people-oriented. It's going to be most useful because we have different apps. Now on my phone, probably I have 50 different apps. But can I use all those apps efficiently and effectively? May not be. So at times it becomes a technology overload as well. So we need to balance between technology overload and no infrastructure or no technology. And that is where we come back to the level of earlier discussion about 24/7 services. Many of our cities do not even have 24/7 services, or many of these things. So again, these discussions are circling around some basic principles, but then expanding into many different forums.
So would smart cities be green also?
Yes, so I have worked for last 12 years on various aspects of urban energy and environment aspects of it. So I would say my dream is to make these cities greener. Green not in a sense of greenwashing, but also really having something substantially green in terms of green technologies. Urban green, that is trees and plantations and otherwise. Having percolative surfaces in our cities so that water that falls into the ground goes into the aquifer and all. So all these are aspects of greenness. One big aspect that I had been working with for all these years is looking into how can we really reduce the energy coming in from fossil resources, going more towards renewable resources. But obviously many of the people are talking about cost aspect. Cost aspect is going to be discussed in the entire smart cities discussion with whatever infrastructure, whatever services that we talk about. So again, going back to green energy, can we supply parts of our overall energy supply, including electricity, with some kind of green energy, be it solar, wind, geothermal, wave energy, or other parts of it. For an example, our solid waste can also produce energy, methane energy, or that can be converted into electricity and all. So can we really use these different kinds of energy in a green way, recyclable way and all, so that we can really have greenness inherent, inculcated in all of our behaviors, as well as the overall city infrastructure. When I talk about behavior, that also means that if at all I don't need, I would switch off a light or switch off the tap and all. These are small things, but it adds up. In our Indian terms, we know that in Gujarati we say "tipe tipe sarovar bharaye." That is like with every small drop we can fill up a lake. So point is, all these things will become part of it, integral part of it. And greenness, the level of greenness will also keep on increasing over time as we all join in together, putting our efforts there.
So we also are talking about climate change, that has become a major debatable issue these days. So would smart cities be also climate resilient?
Sure. So just to give a background, I had been working with Brookhaven National Lab for all these years. And there we work a lot on energy and energy policies and climate change mitigation. But I also am a lead author of one of the US global change programs, Impacts of Climate Change on Energy Use and Production. But with that, we are also working at the urban level on all the climate impacts and all the infrastructure. And that is where resiliency becomes an integral part of it. So one, in the mitigation part of it, and second is building our infrastructure in such a way that is climate resilient. Now, as I said, I live 60 miles east on Long Island from New York City. And New York City was hit 2-3 years ago with a superstorm Sandy. And that time, the whole of New York was dark, black. But a couple of patches were still lit. They had electricity. Why? Because they had small smart grids. They had solar on the rooftop. All these things become a part of resiliency. Obviously, if at all there is going to be a storm surge, then with the storm surge, either it's in the river or in the ocean, we need to build our infrastructure to the level that the storm surge doesn't really affect the operations. What happened in New York City, many of the subways were filled with water. Many of the buildings' basements were filled with water, and that's how they could not operate. Now, that is a part of resiliency. So can we really build our infrastructure in such a way that is resilient from all these different climate impacts? But at the same time, we need to do other parts of it that when there is no light, there is no electricity, can we still operate? So that is a part of smart grid and other aspects that can be built to really see whether we are looking into disaster management as well. And then also these are the parts of some of the technology innovation that we just talked about. All this technology innovation will become part of smart cities. In smart cities, people are also talking about smart grid. So all these are integral part of it, but you can see then it plays into resiliency as well. So these are interchangeable, interconnecting systems and all, and useful.
So we are talking about smart cities, we are talking about smart transport, smart technology, smart infrastructure. So do you think these smart cities should have smart people too?
Perfect. So you have touched on a good point that I had been talking about, that we need to have people-oriented development. For an example, yes, our big cities like Mumbai, Delhi, New York, London are putting up cutting-edge infrastructure. Great. But do you really think that this infrastructure should be put up in a third-tier city in India? Well, that's a debatable question. Cost and benefit analysis needs to be done to really understand whether X technology is useful for Y location or not. So that's a kind of a very, very subjective issue on how we can grow smarter. So, and that is where, if at all we really put some very alien technology into an area where it's not going to be used, then it's not worth to be put in. So the crux of the whole discussion is people. If at all we are not going to be using it, then what's the purpose of having it? Like for example, I know one simple thing. Long ago in mid-90s, I remember I was roaming around some of the parts of Saurashtra in Saurashtra in Gujarat. And there, with big financial aid, they put up some of the reverse osmosis plants to convert seawater into potable water. But they were not used soon after they were put in. And there were many aspects of it. And there is no blame game. Point is that technology probably was not suitable for that area for that time. Now if you go and put it up, probably people are really willing to take it up and use it and maintain it and all. But there were many aspects. Let's not go into it. Point is that technology was not suitable at that time. So that's the kind of discussion.
As we all know, our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, is trying to achieve the Housing for All dream by 2022. And also the Smart City project is his pet project. So do you think making smart cities will help us achieve the Housing for All dream?
Have housing as 30-40% of the entire economy. In terms of water consumption, in terms of waste generated, in terms of energy consumed.
We are talking about smart cities only as business and investment opportunity. So is there any other aspect to it that that people are not talking about?
Yes, it's more than business and opportunity because it's overall people's development. Making our cities smarter is, as we talked a minute ago, making it more sustainable for our future generations and all. So it's investments, technology is part of it, but it needs to be people-centric. It needs to be focused on what we want and how can we do it, rather than only from the finance and technology point of view. Yes, finance and technology are integral part of it. If we don't have that, cities are not going to become smarter or not going to go from here to here. So yes, they are definitely part of it, but there are other parts of it as well.
As we all know, our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, is trying to achieve the Housing for All dream by 2022. And also the Smart City project is his pet project. So do you think making smart cities will help us achieve the Housing for All dream?
Housing is an integral part of these discussions. Many of the cities have housing as 30-40% of the entire economy. In terms of water consumption, in terms of waste generated, in terms of energy consumed. In New York City, I know buildings make 70% of energy consumed. In all of our cities, housing are going to be and is a kind of key aspect of cities' development. So the goal of Housing for All by 2022 is a very ambitious goal, but I'm sure we all are looking forward to having that goal achieved, because we all want at least livable house for all of us. And I'm sure we want all of our fellow citizens to have similar level of livable house at the level that they are expecting. So we wish and we all should strive towards having that housing for all goal achieved as soon as possible. And with housing, obviously these other infrastructure services are also integrated, like energy, water, telecommunication, waste disposal, public health and safety, all are a very integral part of it.
So what role can urban design play in smart cities?
Well, good question, but let me try to expand that question. Urban design is in two ways. One is whatever is the existing design, and then whatever we are designing for expansion. But with this design, urban planning also makes a big part of it. Urban managers also become a big part of it. So I'm just trying to expand your definition of design and saying, well, with design we need planning, we need management, we need implementers and all. So these all become a big part of it. So if at all I consider that as a wider opportunity to link in various different aspects of urban development, then definitely we need to make that urban development interconnected as well as sustainable. And so urban design can finally feed into urban development that is sustainable. Now many people are talking about high density cities or low density cities that are good for them, and there are various aspects of it. So a city needs to debate whether a city wants to be a compact high development city or a city wants to be a spread out city. There are positives and negatives of it, and there are many a times perceived notions about whether this is good for me or not. So there is a lot that needs to go into it for a city to become the city that is aspired by their citizens. And design is just one of the instruments that's going to give citizens the city that they are looking for.
So my next question to you is, we are going the smarter way. So do you think in this process we need to forget, or we are forgetting, the ancient construction and design techniques?
Well, you have touched upon a very sensitive issue in terms of development process. So this is talking about a wider development process and what we aspire for. We are sitting in Gurgaon, and Gurgaon is a great example, and I would not say in a derogatory manner, but point is that we all learn over time. So we earlier had, say, homes and other buildings that were designed looking into this 44 Celsius outside, and the kind of wind patterns that we have, kind of range that we have and all. Now the buildings that are built nowadays, especially these commercial buildings, they have all glass facades. And I'm not saying glass facades are bad, but point is the buildings need to be designed considering that if at all I have all these glass facades, then how can I make it consume less energy? Because all these glass facades are having a lot of sun rays coming in, and that really increases the inside temperature. But these sun rays going out would not take the heat out. So heat is trapped inside. And that's the same principle of greenhouse gas emissions trapping in the Earth's atmosphere, with the greenhouse gas emissions creating a whole shield like a glass around the Earth. So bringing that same idea back here, glass creates that kind of element with which the heat would not go back out, or not go back out as quickly as it came in. So where is the ventilation? How are we taking the heat out? With air conditioning. So air conditioning loads go up tremendously for all these big buildings which are having glass facades. So is it what we had previously? Did we used to use this much of air conditioning previously? So that's the kind of progression that we have made from there to here. Now with green buildings, we are again starting to talk about how buildings can start consuming less energy, less water and all. So it's a process of all of us doing something and then partially undoing parts of it. So this is the development process. And that is where we learn from probably some of our mistakes. And obviously then we bring in our old traditions and say, oh, well, they were useful. So we all learn from our mistakes, and we all learn in the process of development. How do we do it? Because none of us have a silver bullet. None of us know how precisely it needs to be done. So when you initially asked me about the definition of smart cities, I said you said exactly what's the definition. I said I don't have an exact definition of smart city because of the same reason. Because our definitions, our perceptions, our expectations keep on changing as we evolve into a new era.
So speaking with you has actually made me smarter. And thank you so much for coming on our show and sharing so much information about smart cities. And I think our viewers will become even smarter when they watch this episode.
No, I think it's all about growing together to achieve a next level of urban development. So we all are in that together, and it's a process of all of us evolving over time and learning from our we call it learning by doing.
So thank you once again for coming on our show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, we are very happy to have you here, and I think the kind of information that you have given, I think you are the right person, you were the best person to talk on smart cities. So this was Mr. Vatsal Bhatt who spoke about smart cities. Now all of us know what exactly are smart cities, the components of it, and the need of the hour is that with the development of smart cities, even we people become smart too. For more updates on real estate, architecture and design, stay tuned to Spin TV. Goodbye and take care.